start streaming, and we are definitely live. Like, we are live. Okay, we wait 1 minute till people maybe start joining. Wait, should we get like the chat here?
Chat.
Um,
Encouraging people to
engage with us.
Yeah.
I mean, do we ignore people? I think we ignored some people last time.
No,
we were just...
No, whenever people post in the chat, you immediately stop what you're saying and start responding to them.
Yes, I want to show them that they're important, Yani.
All right, 8:30. We're
8:30.
on.
We're on, and we got the chat here. So if you guys want to say something, we can...
Okay, you start and then we'll talk about that.
Okay, 1 second. So, hello, and welcome back to this stream episode. Habibis, Habibtis, and Habib and Bees. We are live again, exchanged, and we have so much to talk about, as always.
It's part of our introduction that we say, hello, Habibis, Habibtis, and Habib and Bees. We have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But this week we really do. First of all, just a quick note. I think people have been tuning in and participating in the chat, but just want to really encourage people to do so. We want this to be interactive. We want it to be a community space. So if you have thoughts, questions, concerns, rage, tell us what you're feeling and what you want to talk about, and we will react and adjust accordingly. We're delighted that you're here and delighted to hear from you.
Yeah. So yeah, want to take it away?
Yeah.
We have...
Okay, so a few things we wanted to cover today. The first was the state of repression globally of Palestine solidarity. I spent a lot of time today talking with a comrade about the similarities and kind of the timeline differences between the US and Germany, particularly in light of the Mahmoud Khalil case at the moment, which has been very well scandalized and very well publicized, as it should be, but a lot of very similar, if not identical, cases have actually taken place in Germany, and they've also taken place over the course of the last 40, 50, 60 plus however many years in the US. I mean, there are political prisoners everywhere. There are political prisoners in the US and the UK and Germany who have engaged in direct action, who have literally taken their responsibility as global citizens to dissuade and punish genocide where it happens seriously, and have been very severely targeted and imprisoned for it, where there are a lot of people who are serving sentences without charge and have been in prison for 6 months or 12 months or longer, or have a view to be in prison for a really long time in administrative detention.
Years, yeah.
No, but I'm saying without any charge, without having even been charged. So we have comrades here who also have been imprisoned without charge and are waiting for it. And in a lot of cases, I'm not sure if all of the cases, but I would imagine the majority of cases, the people who are imprisoned do not have a secure residency status. So people don't have, outside of the community, people don't have a real handle on where they are, where they're allowed to be. They have lawyers, hopefully, fighting for them, but they've also been so criminalized and so scapegoated and pushed to the side in society that no one is really too concerned about holding the state accountable for them. So this is something that we really wanted to discuss because, as I said, this case with Khalil has been scandalized and has been publicized the way that it should be. But at the same time, a few weeks ago, or a month and a half ago, 2 of our comrades were deported to Greece. They were kidnapped and deported to Greece. They were are survivors of the Gaza genocide, and they were taken off the street and sent away. And we had a comrade who was held, a young Palestinian from Gaza, 19 years old, was held in administrative detention basically for a month under threat of deportation, and was just released. He lost 12 kilos because he wasn't provided with any halal food, and there was no respect for, I mean, of course there's no respect for anything outside. I mean, there's no respect in prison, but there's certainly no respect when you're being criminalized for being Arab and being Muslim, and certainly for being Palestinian. The conditions are horrific.
But I mean, that's the whole point. All of this took place in Germany. It did not take place in the US. And it's part of the reason why we see the Mahmoud Khalil case being scandalized very well, I must say, is because first off, it didn't take place in Germany, where I don't know, we seem to have our media seems to be completely aligned with the complicity of the state in genocide, number one. And number two, Mahmoud Khalil has been framed as the perfect, literally the perfect victim, which, I mean, shout out to the last time we were talking about this. Mahmoud Khalil was the arguments right now, the discussions that are taking place in US media are whether or not he committed a crime, as if that is the reason or reason enough to deport someone out of the country who was there legally. And this is I think what's quite damaging, not because it focuses on him, but because it takes focus away from everybody else who has suffered similar fate without the whole attention around it, without without the media concern as well, because these people who were deported here or who were threatened with deportation and were locked up here had supposed criminal charges. And I don't think we need to tell people that legality does not mean morality, does not equal morality. Many horrible things were legal back then. And we have right now declarations of anti-Semitism that basically criminalize just speaking about genocide. And when you're at that point where also BDS is completely criminalized, which means you have no form of resistance that is permissible, and that means you are just a criminal if you exist as a Palestinian, which gives them the complete reason to deport you. Because Mahmoud Khalil maybe shouldn't be deported because he wasn't a criminal, but these people were criminals according to the German state.
And this was, of course, the way that people here are made out to be criminals is largely on the basis of completely fabricated content material. It's also based on the removal of the fundamental right of assembly and the right to protest. So if these people were charged with being at a demo and the demo was forbidden by the police for any number of outrageously racist, problematic, also illegal reasons, then still they're able to represent these people as criminals and therefore push down any kind of accountability from the public in looking at them and saying, wait a second, this is completely unjust. But I think, I mean, again, I've said this every week for the past 4 weeks, but get The Perfect Victims book by Mohamed El-Kurd. It is probably the most important book I've ever read, and it has changed my entire fundamental critical thinking. My entire kind of foundation of critical thinking has been elevated by reading this book. And it's because once you have this awareness of how perfect victims are created and how that whole paradigm is weaponized, you start to see it absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. I mean, in every article that I've read, even ones, again, from very well-meaning activists or people or lawyers or people who are standing in solidarity and want to fight, it's always lawful citizen. And this is a lawful citizen, lawful citizen.
Yeah.
And the point is, of course, not whether or not he was a lawful citizen, because that can be interpreted in, as we said, any number of ways. There's no objective basis for that. But also because of what that does to everyone else, and not just the people that we just mentioned, like our comrades here who are subject to a different type of system, but also, what if you have an unlawful citizen? I don't know. What if someone has some kind of charge? I don't know. Whatever the minor charge is, and let's say, for the sake of argument, it's a totally reasonable charge. They did something wrong. do they still deserve to be kidnapped by plainclothes police, deported?
Yeah. I just want to draw a comparison to the George Floyd murder, because the whole discussion during the George Floyd murder was whether or not he had what was it, like fake currency or something
It
like
was something
that.
he was selling.
Something he was selling, or maybe he was on drugs, or whatever the justification was. This takes away from the horrific fact that a cop murdered a black man, regardless um, of what the so-called reason is. And in the same way, we need to not look at whether or not they were criminals under the laws of the state that does these repressions, because it does not take away their fundamental rights to live and to gather, for example, and to voice their concerns for their loved ones, for their families being genocided in Gaza. And this is what we said, what we talked about last time, is you lose your rights when you are, like, the part of dehumanization is you also lose your rights as a person, as an equal human, if you stand up for Palestine. And this is what we're seeing in Germany, what we're also seeing, and what many are ignoring in Germany, and what we're focusing on right now in the US because of the framing of the perfect victim.
And I think this is really important because ultimately I see a lot of activists, and again, a lot of really well-intentioned, well-meaning people split between these two frameworks, let's say. The first one is they do want to stand in solidarity with Palestine, and they are standing in solidarity with Palestine. They're figuring out what that means, what concrete material solidarity in practice really necessitates. And on the other hand, they really are still playing into the narratives of the oppressor and trying to reason with the rhetoric and with the philosophy of the oppressor, which is, of course, to oppress. And fundamentally, when you look at these distractions and these arguments that they throw at you, well, was he lawful? Well, was he this? Well, was he that? Well, was he perfect? Well, was he kind? Or was he an asshole? Or whatever it is.
Was he a good student?
Was he a good student? Yeah. Did he have hobbies? Was he nice to his wife? I mean, these are all actual things that we hear as ways of validating or devalidating someone's humanity. And ultimately, it's not our job to, or rather, it is our job to say, we won't engage in those narratives at all. We absolutely reject the premise of that, because the premise of those narratives are those of the oppressor. They're designed to serve the oppressor.
Yeah. Prove to me that you're human first, then you get your rights. By trying to prove that I'm human, I lose some of my humanity. And this is literally at the core of supremacy itself. And yeah, so I really don't think we should engage in these arguments. But it's good to talk about it, because it gives us hopefully all of us, the frame that we need to the frame that we need to have these conversations in, which is never talk from the position of maintaining the hegemonic power right now. Talk from the position of the oppressed first. Prioritize the rights of the oppressed first when you're talking about liberation as a concept.
We're really spitting fire.
We're spitting fire.
Oh my
right?
God.
Okay.
Where do we get onto this topic?
I do not
Holy
know.
shit.
I don't think that was on the list today.
No, but this is really important. Wait, there was one point. Yeah, and this was something that we mentioned last week, and again that we've been kind of alluding to in terms of how to push how to push the movement and how to push our activism forward and demand more of ourselves. The argumentation has changed. It has evolved, as have we in the last year and a half, in the past couple years, depending how, number of years, decade, depending on how long you've been in the movement. But it's certainly evolved and shifted over the past year and a half. And now at this moment, we've seen what we've been doing. I mean, whether you want to say it hasn't been enough or it hasn't worked, a combination of both of them. Regardless, without having to have a negative view or take a kind of despairing lens in any respect. It is our responsibility to be more critical of ourselves, and having these conversations and challenging ourselves to say, how do we engage and disengage with the right narratives? That's where the movement is now. I think that's where it needs to be now. And yeah, I mean, and I think that's also reflected in public discourse. And as we talked about the Oscars last week, there actually, ironically, are more opportunities. Yeah, but there are more opportunities to do so, and we should be taking advantage of them. They're very exciting and very relevant. So
a bit of standpoint theory. I love it. Yeah. Asmat was here. Sarsaramen abi. Sarsaramen. This is Kurdish. This is the only thing I know in Kurdish.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's one of my best friends. He's a Kurdish guy. Yeah.
Gotta learn some Kurdish. Or I don't know. I just want to learn. I want to learn.
No, just learn Sarsaramen. It means like on my head. It's like a sign of respect. And every Kurdish person you say this to, they're like, "Oh, thank you," and stuff. So cool. That's the only words you need in Kurdish is this.
All right.
Okay.
That's next for me. Okay.
What else? Yes, I want to go to how. Thank you, Habibi. Yeah, I want to go to also the context of Mahmoud Khalil being deported, being literally kidnapped in the middle of university, is how Zionism seeps into it. It's first off, it's the norm. Like, it has been so normalized to have a settler colonial ideology in university that even the person, like what the university president, is an ex-IDF soldier, is an ex-occupation soldier who was like in intelligence or some shit.
Yep.
And she was the one that initiated the deportation thing, which means that I mean, we talk about, like, when we start saying stuff about Palestine, they all say to us, specifically Germans, they're like, "Oh yeah, but you're not neutral." First off, it's not my goal to be neutral. I refuse to be neutral in a system of oppression. It means I'm on the side of the oppressor, number one. And number two, you're not concerned about neutrality when an occupation soldier is making decisions about the lives of a Palestinian, not even in historic Palestine, which means this supremacy, the Jewish supremacy that we talked about in this context, is also outside of Palestine, but the same dynamics, the same hierarchy of a Zionist and a Palestinian. It's always this. And we need to always look at these power dynamics and refuse to talk about like neutrality when we're having conversations about oppression. Yeah.
This is really important though, and I think this reminds me of the interview or discussion we did with Hamza around layers of occupation, because this is both layers of occupation, but it is a step further than that. It's layers of supremacy and layers of the expansionism of this project that are inherent to Zionism. And of course, it's not just geographical. It's not that they want to continue colonizing, or rather, it's not only that they want to continue colonizing, that they're moving into Lebanon, Syria, that they're now bombing Yemen, or the US and the UK are bombing Yemen. But it's that it's an expansionist ideology in the way that ruling class ideologies necessarily are expansionist, because they thirst for control. And part of that is not just taking over physical land, but it's literally taking over what you can think, and certainly what you can say and what you can stand for. And look, I think maybe to some degree it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it because I don't think it can be said enough. What we see now under Trump, because there are still liberals who will look at you and say, well, you elected Trump by not re-electing Biden so he could continue genociding in his method of choice. This was all percolating and and simmering under Biden, and not just simmering. I mean, it really was coming to a head. It was coming to the surface as well. And all of these people were deeply criminalized. All of these activists were all represented by the mainstream media as anti-Semites. And this was also part of not just manufacturing consent for genocide, but manufacturing consent for the next stage of expansionism, expansionist ideology and oppression that we now see in the US. And of course, this is this collaboration and inevitable partnership between the capitalists and the fascists.
I mean, yes, we have reached a point where Trump's attempt to, like, the choice between, first off, blaming minorities for not saving your white ass from fascism is very on brand for fascists, and it's like the most liberal thing you can do. Because you didn't choose Kamala over Gaza, who was literally financing a genocide and profiting off of a genocide in Gaza, you now have Trump, who is gonna be somehow worse. It takes away from your responsibility as a white person who is probably gonna profit off of fascism through the exploitation of the other group. But also the idea that you can have a Zionist, not even like hiding, someone who is hiding it, someone who is very proud of being a Zionist, which we had Biden and also Trudeau, for example, literally saying what they mean when they say like, oh yeah, I am proud to be a Zionist, is I am proud to be for supremacy. I am proud to be a racist. And these people, you cannot fight fascism with these people because they are on the side of fascists.
Yeah.
Like liberals and fascists are both on the same side, and this is the side of capitalists. It's not, yeah.
It's really, I saw this a couple days ago. I don't know if it was a new clip or just one of the many of Trudeau saying, I'm proud to be a Zionist.
Yeah.
And you really have to think, these people, I had this thought, and it was actually a really satisfying and hopeful thought. These people really think that they will take over the world and there will be no resistance. And they think they will win over the resistance of the masses to their evils, their racism and their supremacy. They think that this will be the world order. And as much as we have seen fascism and authoritarianism and police states and violence and all of these horrible historical events over the course of history, we've also always seen prolific, legendary resistance to it. And we've had unsuccessful revolutions too, but there are always revolutions, there's always resistance. And when you look at these people, you really I had to kind of smirk a little bit because they think they're invincible. And they look at the masses rising, they look at this mass movement, and they think that they are invincible enough to make the statement, I'm proud to be a Zionist.
Yeah.
How can they really not recognize that in 5, 10, 20, however many years, that will be the equivalent of saying, I was proud to be a Nazi, except it'll be on videotape in front of dead Palestinian children, hundreds of thousands of murdered people whose blood they have on their hands.
Yeah. I think like history will judge all of those that not only stood by but also supported this genocide, and liberals will in 30 years will say, oh no, I was part of the resistance, just like they say right now, oh, my parents were part of the resistance, or my grandparents were not okay with this. It's not enough to not be okay. It's not enough. Resistance is not just sitting at home and just saying, oh no, I will not engage with this because it doesn't affect me. I'm not for it, but I'm also not against it. or I'm against it, I'm just not willing to take action, that just it just means you're letting the powerful remain in power because you do not know how effective and how you can weaponize even your workforce as a tool to end oppression. If you want to stay at home and not do anything, you can stay at home and strike with people to stop the government. There is no excuse for just not doing anything.
And look, I think I've talked about this a lot. I think we've probably even talked about it on the stream. But again, I think it's important to reiterate. At this point, after a year and a half of fighting, and let's say, for example, in Germany, where there's been a lot of getting beaten up and being heavily targeted and repressed, and people are jaded, understandably so, and people feel not necessarily hopeless. I haven't, like, it's not really about hopelessness, but I think there is quite a bit of bitterness, and certainly I feel, I mean, we feel bitterness looking around at people who could have been on the streets with us and haven't, but still claim themselves to be anti-fascist or this or that or the other thing. Ultimately, though, in terms of political approach, it does really make sense to continue to mobilize people, and also when people approach you, to express with solidarity, I think, that the fact that they're arriving a year and a half into a genocide and a year and a half of all of us having been beaten by cops and targeted by the state and all of this, it feels a little bit bitter. And let's talk about that and process that together. It's totally reasonable that we're feeling that. And also, we're really glad that more people are arriving to the movement. Would have been great if it was earlier, but it wasn't. So now you're here. But why are you here? Are you here to be recognized for it? Are you here to get a pat on the head or a little bit of clout or gratitude for being part of the resistance? Or are you here for the right reasons? Because that will determine what use you really are to the movement and how long you stick around.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't remember if I said this the other week, but I just want to maybe share like a very short piece of a message that I got from someone, which was really, really special. I hope this is okay that I'm sharing this. Someone messaged me on Instagram a few weeks ago. I think I sent this to you.
Okay.
And wrote me to say that they're learning a lot from my page. They're an American Jew, learning a lot about Germany. They have ties to Germany, Nazi genocide survivors in their family. And they had a feeling about what was actually happening in Germany that just didn't sit right with them, but they didn't really have any background. Had the feeling that the country was never denazified, but wasn't able to articulate it. And they're in the process of learning about their own preciousness being a Jew and descendant of Holocaust survivors. And they said, and how I approach Palestinian resistance and anti-Zionism so tepidly and always with an undercurrent of Jewish supremacy. And then they thanked me for my work and said that it was helping them to push and cause growing pains in the direction of true liberation. And I mean,
can I just say something? That is a very, very key point in arriving late. Are you if you're arriving late with your preconceived notion of what reality is, you can be more damaging to the movement if you are not willing to learn. If you're gonna arrive and try to push knowingly or unknowingly liberal Zionist bullshit, then you are more damaging to the movement than you are a help. And we've seen this with supposed anti-Zionist Jews who are like, oh no, we're very anti-Zionist, but we just need to end the occupation and stop the genocide. Yeah.
So we can live in peace and condemn Hamas, by the way. God forbid you didn't do that.
End the occupation and stopping the genocide means a little bit of settler colonialism is accepted, and you are now telling the Native Americans in their reservations, hey, listen, accept the reservations. You are telling the black people in the Bantustans, hey, we're here, facts on the ground, let's try to live in peace, without actual restorative justice, which means land back. And this is what the Native Americans have been fighting for. This is what all indigenous people, the indigenous people in Australia are fighting for, indigenous people in New Zealand are fighting for. And this is why Palestine is very central in the discourse around how indigeneity was like, first off, co-opted by supposed indigenous people, white people supposedly indigenous to the Middle East, to Palestine, and also white people. There's a common theme. It's always white people supposedly indigenous to Africa, white people supposedly indigenous to Australia, to New Zealand, and all of the actual indigenous people being pushed out, genocided, and put into small reservations, small areas that are easier to control by the white supremacist entity that is created there. So, yeah.
But this was also interesting because what you're describing is very key. I mean, as you said, it's always this needing to create victimhood in order to justify it, but it's also creating what's the noun of it? Indigeneity.
Yeah.
And I think both of those things have been created in this realm of Jewish supremacy, and what this person talks about in even mentioning the phrase Jewish preciousness is such a genius thing to say. I mean, I've talked about this extensively, but it's such a specific and incredibly astute term, because it really gets at the core of how Jews have been created as victims. Dargestellt is this word that I'm constantly searching for, and like it's represented, but it's like portrayed. Yeah, I guess, but it's more of an active. Anyway, Jews have been portrayed, and not just portrayed, but it's been instilled in Jews, let's say in the US, that they are the victims, that they are the heroes of their own victimhood. And this leads to this feeling of, or paradigm of preciousness. I don't even think it requires more explanation, because it's so perfectly put. But ultimately, because of this, you've created a body of settlers and colonizers who really genuinely believe in their right to be in this space. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of white people can also play that role and have played that role, but they've of course taken advantage of this particular group that is Jewish and has a history of oppression in the way that Jews have a history of oppression, and they've taken it and created such a monstrosity out of it, very, very intentionally and very strategically and systematically. Yeah,
but I also want to say it's not very unique. It's
no.
The Europeans who went to the Americas were also supposed outcasts from the original, from the European continent. The people, the first settlers in Australia were prisoners. I think Australia was in general just thought of as a prison. So it was people, outcasts, people who that society did not accept. Right. So
it's a formula.
It's a formula, and it works. It has worked in the past, and now it's our job to not make it work. And
it's true. It is a formula, and it literally is. It's so specifically outlined by Theodor Herzl. Specifically, let's take this oppressed group and use them to oppress others, to leave ourselves room to oppress others in the place that we've now banished them from. It's really an equation. Anyway, I bring this up because just to wrap up our point around people arriving to the movement, because arriving with this kind of humility and with a real ambition, political ambition, not personal ambition, but a political ambition to catch up and to be of use in this fight for liberation and in joint struggle is, in my experience, unfortunately very rare. I wish it was more common, but I think it's probably a mix of people doing it quietly because they feel ashamed. But I think that the process of admitting to your own shame is so empowering, and it's so necessary. So I had a lot of appreciation for this person, and I think being aware now of how we mobilize people to the movement, because it is still possible and it will happen. We just, it matters to be aware of that process and to create something intentional with it.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh, that was. It's. I think we were just spitting.
I think we also spoke like twice as fast as we usually spoke. I was just with an American friend, as a bit of an aside, I really speak at a totally different pace in Germany with non-native speakers than I speak with Americans or native. I speak at my pace with you because you're basically native. but you're speaking with, depends on the person, but I don't think most people have heard me speak at my usual pace.
But listen, there is an option they can play.
They can play at half speed.
It just sucks for the people watching live.
Yeah, because I can't really write in the. Well, I can still write in the chat. But no, it's funny because I feel like I was just hanging out with an American friend, and my thoughts are moving at the same pace as my voice, which is very satisfying because usually I have to slow down my voice and my thoughts are off in the distance. So cool.
Yeah. So. What else?
All right, what's our next topic?
We wanted to talk about, first off, a new insane report. I can share the link. Israel is denying, we can also show the link, but we have to, guys, you might lose us a little bit sound-wise, but I'll try to catch us up. I'm sorry, one second. This is boomer thing. Just wait, hold on. Hello? No, okay, we're still there. People can still hear us. Okay, so what we have is Israel is denying doctors and international aid workers entry to Gaza at unprecedented rates. They're enforcing new visa restrictions for aid workers, which deny actual medical support for people who have survived the complete bombardment of Gaza, which, we talked about how it's not actually a ceasefire because people are being killed by the Israeli state, by the occupation forces still.
Over 150 people.
Over 150 people. Like the fact that we have these numbers is, and also we have these numbers with this lack of media coverage, tells you exactly who are the worthy victims and who are the unworthy victims. And
I think they're also specifically. Sorry, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention there was a teenager that was released from the occupation prisons, and you can read it in the report. And he talks about psychological torture. He talks about prolonged shackling. He talks about starvation method. He talks about electroshocking. So we basically have torture camps where they take teenagers, doctors, aid workers, and they kidnap them. They take them not even as hostages, because hostages means that you want something in return. They do not want anything in return. The only thing that this genocidal, settler colonial ethno-state wants is expansion and the removal and the ethnic cleansing of the indigenous population. And it's through a multitude of ways, different ways depending on the location. But the goal is still the same and has been the same since 1948, since 1947, which was detailed as much land as possible with as few Arabs, meaning Palestinians, as possible. and this is still the same goal. I'm sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Look, I think they're clearly also taking advantage of marketing the change fire as a ceasefire and just relying on the media to only project that. And really, I mean, like, I'm not following actively the mainstream media anymore, except to check in and see how outrageous it is, and the things that we see about how little they're reporting. But it's pretty shocking, because it's pretty shocking to once again come to terms with the fact that is what most people are seeing is. And they're not looking much further, because there is still this mass trust in the means of propaganda in the mainstream media to tell them that there's been a ceasefire. Hamas refuses to
extend the
first step, right. And then, of course, everything under the surface is Israel, like, fanatically and maniacally doing pulling out every sadistic trick and disgusting tactic possible to make sure that they get to murder and slaughter more people. So they're relying on the fact that anyone who's being, let's say, mobilized or at least activated in understanding these things about the movement is still to some degree influenced by the mainstream media and is buying this as a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Because our friend's cousin Amjad, 3 years old, wasn't reported on any of the mainstream medias. No one would know about that. Like, Palestinian Youth Movement put out a statement, and it was reported on the Resistance News Network and Telegram, and we tried to, make it known and say his name and all of these things, but that's happened to 150 people, including a mass murder, a massacre of 9 people in Beit Lahia the other day. And no one's hearing about this, so they really do assume that it's a ceasefire, whereas, of course, we should be beside ourselves and yeah. I'm like afraid to say like, we should be beside ourselves, and the work really needs to continue on this basis. The other thing that I just wanted to say about that is not only are they relying on the media to peddle disinformation, but they're also relying on the movement being exhausted after a year and a half and taking this in as a change in perspective, basically, that, well, yeah, they're still murdering people, but it's 150 people instead of 40,000, yeah.
Which the number that stagnated even after like weeks of continuous murder.
Yeah.
Linda says also the genocide is not only carried out by active killing, so ceasefire is misleading anyway. Yes, it's like the genocide right now by blocking aid. By blocking aid, you make Palestinians' lives almost non-savable, because if you are someone who has somehow survived the destruction of 80% of the buildings in Gaza, and most definitely lost family members, regardless of the insane psychological trauma of surviving a genocide, you also have physical injuries, and these physical injuries need to be treated, regardless of the cancer patients who have not been able to get their medication, the diabetes patients, the heart patients, all of these all of these people that require regular care are now being not just. So Israel not only uses starvation as a method of war, as a weapon of war, it's also using medicine as a method of war. And this is simply a continuation of the genocide. You do not need to use 2,000-pound bombs. You can just cut off the electricity and the water, which they have also done.
But especially, I think this point around medical care is really central, because when water and food are treated as luxuries, or rather not luxuries, but whatever the step before luxuries, they're treated as luxuries in this context when you're not allowing anything in, then can you imagine giving chemo to a cancer patient. I mean, that's like a 5-star hotel. And this is again, we keep coming back to this because it's so fundamental and because you see it in a gazillion different ways. The dehumanization is everywhere. I mean, Maras' dad needs insulin. Where's he supposed to get insulin? He's in the north of Gaza. There's a complete blockade. And I mean, it's been a nightmare throughout the last year and a half.
Yeah.
But even saying that, there's some kind of, I mean, of course he fundamentally deserve. I mean, the whole framing is so fucked up. But we've reached this point where because they've denied so much, now even with the blockade, as soon as they now let in a little bit of food and water, it's going to be like, oh well, you know, they're fine.
Yeah.
And again, because before the genocide, they managed the amount of food, regulated the amount of food, the number of calories that Palestinians in Gaza were able to consume per day, and they called it putting the Gazans on a diet.
Yeah, 2,979 was the amount of calories per person per day. And this was also reported on by a very liberal Zionist person. Yeah, I also like just to emphasize Linda's point. The genocide is not the goal. The goal is and has been more land with less Palestinians, which means making Palestinians' lives so difficult that they either choose to go away as if it's a choice, or they suffer under oppression, under occupation, for example, under an actual apartheid system in the West Bank and historic Palestine 48, or they move. And this is the choice that many Palestinians are facing, and many of them are steadfast and remaining on their land despite having the ability to go somewhere else, but it's their land. Why would they leave? So it's not just genocide here, it's also the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. And
all of these methods of forced displacement and then branding them in different ways as if they weren't.
So it's, and I also I want to talk about there was a clip going around. If anybody saw it, I'm really sorry. This of an Israeli comedian.
Oh, oh my God.
Yes.
It is so excruciating. We're not playing it here.
No, we're not playing it. We're just. I just wanna
Isn't it such a shame, by the way?
What?
Jews used to be funny. Really, that was like a thing. Jews used to be funny, and now we have this disgusting, genocidal, monstrous piece of shit. I mean, we are just. It is all lost.
But I mean,
okay, we also need to say what we're actually talking about in case people don't know.
Okay, so there's a video of an Israeli comedian, and I say comedian in quotations because this guy went on stage and he said, trying to be funny, he's like, oh, so the Palestinian film won an award. Palestinians don't deserve an award. They only know how to play victim. Which is extremely rich coming from someone who always cries wolf when anybody says anything about their ethno-nationalist, racist apartheid state. And they always are like, oh, no, you're doing anti-Semitism against me by saying that. It's...
Every accusation is a confession. Again.
It's so fucking rich. It's so fucking rich. And then he talks about oh, no... insane. I'm warning you. Yeah, that Hasbara played that. It's so weird. And what did he do? Oh yeah, he also said something about fake dead babies or something.
Yeah.
My guy, your state claimed 40 beheaded babies when there were no beheaded babies. This is, every accusation is a confession is so fitting here, because Zionists always play victim when they when they're confronted by any kind of opposition. They always like cry anti-Semitism and cry wolf, and then, which I mean, the story crying wolf leads to actual anti-Semitism, but it's a different conversation. And it's like, it's very on the nose, my guy. You should not do humor. Like, it's not for you.
But then it was so, okay. It was so unbearable to watch. I mean, of course, it was so genocidal, but it was also so pathetic because then the whole room just kind of sat there and no one responded, which, by the way, in itself is just a mark of our failing society, that everyone sat and no one said, what the fuck is wrong with you? You genocidal shit. You're literally getting up on stage making genocidal statements. I'm going to record you and turn you into the ICC. What the fuck?
Or, yeah.
So everyone was silent, and a few people went, I guess it's pretty shocking, I have to say. It's probably, if you aren't familiar with really the things that we're familiar with and you hear that, I guess, I mean, I don't mean to give people credit where they just don't deserve it, but
yeah.
Wow, I mean, it must be pretty shocking.
I don't condone violence. It's just...
Maybe just
I'll just leave it there. Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Man, the streams that we would have if we were in Germany.
If we were in Germany, oh my god.
Yeah, I'm gonna drag you to Oslo and we'll have a real banger stream then.
Yeah, we're still gonna get arrested when we come back. Like, you think it's just gonna...
Yes, but it won't be legal because we didn't... Okay, whatever. We went through this.
Do we have a lawyer? Yeah. Do we have a lawyer in the crowd? Maybe give us some content to what we're allowed to say. Yeah, but I mean, insane. Like, this is... How is this person just
allowed to roam freely?
Yeah, like, this seems so...
But this gets back to this point that I was talking about. These people literally feel invincible.
Yes.
And that is because they have been given a taste of this ruling class power while not actually having any. I mean, they're colonial pawns.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the power in the sense that, I mean, Zionist settlers in historic Palestine are able to inflict enormous suffering on Palestinians, on indigenous subjects. We know that. I'm not downplaying that, obviously, but they believe that they're invincible and that they have this kind of dominating ruling power, and they think that it will never be overturned. And it's very, very striking to see. And again, I don't say this to make excuses or really even to express anything, but you see how much the oppressor dehumanizes themselves
in the process of
dehumanizing others. And people say that. I mean, people have said that clearly. And again, people also say that because it fosters a bit of sympathy for the oppressor. I'm not saying it in that way.
No.
I'm not. I'm saying if you look at I think I've also said this on the stream before, if you look at Netanyahu's face, it is sunken in with evil. He looks like a Horcrux. I mean, he looks worse than Voldemort. You can just see how he has dehumanized himself to the point of being unrecognizable.
I mean, it is actually a thing. Being on the right side of history makes you way more beautiful than... Like, being genocidal makes you ugly. It makes you become less human the more you take away from others' humanity. You both lose. And also, just to your point of like having power, because they have what the Zionists have tasted is just zero accountability.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you give an ethno-supremacist state zero accountability, and you let the watchdog of Western imperialism loose. It's not the watchdog, it's the attack dog of Western imperialism. Just loose. You do not need to rein it in, because the more horror it unleashes, the more money you make. So you do not need to rein it back in. Like, it's not necessary. What did we want to say?
First of all,
our fates are intertwined, and no, I'm messing with you.
Oh my god!
I'm messing with you. Okay, No, it came out of nowhere.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
I literally cannot stop thinking of that. Pops into my head every now and then.
Yeah.
Our fates are intertwined. Alta, your fates are intertwined because your people are genociding his people.
Yeah. No, but
stop genociding. You'll untwine.
You'll untwine, yeah.
Lunatic.
So, oh my God. Yeah, no, like these people. It's always like I remembered this guy because it's the same concept of like self-victimization of like, hey, listen, and the other guy talks about Palestinians as if they do it, but he is literally doing it, and we have even the allies that we have supposedly from the settler society are also doing it. So it seems to be a side effect of supremacy is the constant need to self-victimize in order to somehow not feel like you are the oppressor. You're like not part of the oppression, you know. You're also a little bit oppressed.
Wait, oh my God. Okay. So I have predictions.
Okay.
Last week you were spitting predictions.
Okay,
Maybe we'll make that like a weekly few.
Okay.
I have a prediction. In 20 years, when Palestine is free from the we will see the exact same trajectory that Germans have taken in identifying themselves as Jews, in occupying all spaces that are intended or were intended to be Jewish, that were conceived of as Jewish, certainly synagogues, but also cultural spaces. In the sense that Germans have created themselves as the Jews in order to register as victims and evade accountability and responsibility. My prediction is that the same thing will happen in Palestine.
Yeah.
Jews, Zionists, whatever, Israelis, people who are there, people along the spectrum will start calling themselves Palestinian in the one state that we are fighting for and we believe that we will achieve. They will start identifying themselves as Palestinians. They will begin to try and hide behind the shield of, oh, but I wasn't really a Zionist, or I was for peace, I just wanted peace. They will move into Palestinian cultural spaces, which is something that they, of course, have already done. They've appropriated and stolen not just the land, but the culture and bits of the language and all the food and clothing. They even made some Israeli flag colored flavored kufiyas, like
no,
and they call them Israeli scarves or something, just something beyond belief. So they've laid the foundation for doing this, of course, because they are colonizers and because this is what they've done. But I think that they will deeply double down on it. And if we, in this space, in this community, in the movement, in leftist, areas, have learned anything from being in Germany and observing this paradigm and the way that Germans occupy Judaism and occupy Jewishness, it will be our responsibility to hold the colonizers and the genociders accountable in 20 years, and in a very different way than what will also be happening, which is all of the reckoning with the Hin Rajab Foundation and truly, finding the people who were on the ground committing murder. But this will also be a matter of culturally and socially holding people responsible, because the next level of occupation will arrive after Palestine is free as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I
no,
hope I'm wrong.
We need to continue doing untwining. That's the untwining needs to happen because or at least we need to understand the reason for the intertwining. You cannot just like do the knee-jerk reaction of like, oh yeah, humanitarian, everybody's peace and namaste. Not gonna do kumbaya with our oppressors in 20 years.
Nah.
So, yeah.
By the way, I'm not doing kumbaya with the Germans. I mean, I'm on the subway, people are screaming at me in German. I'm like, please take your fascism out of my face. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh my god, yeah. So it will happen. we will be back in Palestine, and we will do the untwining ourselves.
You got to think about how you're taking me in there, because I am Jewish, my guy, and I am not trying to. I'm not trying to continue like occupying spaces there.
Listen, I rent you a room in my grandfather's house. Just don't take it, Yani, please. Just please don't take the room. Oh my God.
If you offer, you can never be sure, you know?
This is deja vu. I think this is.
Did I make this joke before?
No, but
Really?
I think I'm getting like what was it called? Like DNA saved memories from my grandfather.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
All right.
On that note, I think we can end the stream.
Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you all for being here.
Also, stay tuned. We finally got it together to start posting reels. So we'll splice together some of the bangers from this and other streams. And we'll be back next Sunday evening, per usual.
Per usual. Free Palestine. Bye-bye.